are back. And we have a big guest in the middle of the screen. Good morning,
Yes.
Thomas. Or good afternoon.
Good afternoon, actually. The corner is cutting onto my head. I don't like this layout.
Oh,
Like,
well,
no,
you know,
I'm just messing with you.
it'll be okay. I mean,
Who's muted?
here.
Oh, wait. Bolt.io is saying someone's on mute. Is it Thomas that is on mute?
Oh, I hope not. Let me make sure that it's not. If it is, that was such a rookie move. So,
Thank you to our audience for helping us fix these technical issues.
I mean, if I was the one who was on mute, and then that was my only wisdom I had to say for the next 1.5 hours, I did that in the first couple of. Yeah, there's not.
oh, okay, you're back.
It's good now.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
you're back.
It was operator error. So, anyway, we'll try that again. Good morning or good afternoon, Thomas. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning to you both. Thank you for having me. I guess the other intro, by the way, was way better. I just want to say that, but obviously I was on mute. I just want to make sure.
JP ruined it again.
I know. I don't know. I'd be lucky if they renew me for season 2 at this rate. So. We're gonna need to get a new
addition
host.
at the end of the year.
Yeah, they can't hear you, but they did love your shirt. So there were lots of great comments on the shirt to start. So
Awesome.
So,
That's good.
So what do you do? What is it you say you do here at Microsoft?
Oh, that's hard.
It is actually very hard, because it's like when you explain that role to from different people, then it's like, but you said you do this and this person does that, and how can that be the same role, right? But yeah, so I joined Microsoft, I think it's now a little bit over 2 years ago, as a cloud advocate. And what we are part of Azure engineering, of the developer relations team. My team, or the team I'm in specifically, we are focusing not necessarily on developers, but all technical audiences, especially also IT pros, and we focus on operation types work, like management, and especially now, obviously, which we're going to talk today about hybrid. And the things we do is actually, well, if you look at it, two large focus areas we have. There's one. The first one is actually creating content and delivering content to our audience, as for example in this stream today. And the second one is obviously we are very interested in feedback from our customers, especially when it comes to different scenarios where they go over, they use a couple of different Azure services, for example, and then we want to know what is working, what is not working, and how can we improve, and then bring that back to the different feature teams. So that is basically on a high level what I'm doing.
So the feedback is an interesting one, because of course we're trying to capture feedback too, because even though we have similar jobs, we're in a totally different org, and so of course we're focused on getting feedback. What is the best way for people to get you feedback on especially on these sort of cross Azure experiences of, I'm doing this, and this, and these things didn't play well together, or these things played really well together, but I got stuck here. What's the best way for people to get you that feedback?
So usually I'm very active on social media. So you can just, one thing is or on LinkedIn, for example, you can just reach out there to me, send me a message. I'm not very good in answering these messages very quickly, but once I get back to you, I will obviously then interact, and we will find a way to actually probably have a call, or even have just a message. And then sometimes I probably just give you a link to, for example, if the team or the feature team you're have feedback to, they have sometimes a Git repository, or they have a special way of getting that feedback, then you can enter it directly. It really depends a little bit on how it is, but you can reach out to me again. You find me on Twitter with @ThomasMaurer, or you find me on LinkedIn, or I don't want to do ads on this stream now, but you can also find me on my personal blog, thomasmaurer.ch. There is a contact form which you can use and leverage.
Okay, no, that's totally
I hope
fine.
that doesn't get censored like a beef or something.
No. So we say. No, man, we love for people to talk about the stuff that they do and their content. That's the whole point, giving you a platform to be heard.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So on the Azure teams, where do you spend most of your time focusing? Like what kind of workloads or what kind of scenarios are you most interested in?
So like when you look at what I'm coming from, I came basically from the data center and virtualization parts earlier in the days. I did a lot of infrastructure deployments when I was like working as a Microsoft partner or as a Microsoft customer. And so for me, it was a natural thing to go in these hybrid environments, right? So for me, like I worked a lot with, for example, Azure Stack and the different Azure Stack offerings we currently have. And now one of our larger topics when we talk about hybrid is obviously Azure Arc. So that is where I spend most of my time on. But however, you will see, I mean, that's why I'm here, right, to talk about Azure Arc. You will see Azure Arc has a lot of touch points with a lot of different things. And so, yeah, that's going to be interesting. But that is where I spend most of my time on.
Okay, cool. So for people who aren't familiar, I mean, what is Azure Arc?
So, I mean, what we saw before I go into like a little bit of Azure Arc, what we saw a lot is that hybrid cloud is a big, obviously, topic for a lot of customers out there, right? I think it was Jason Sanders who said during the Ignite 2019 keynote, when we still had in-person events, he basically, while he was doing his keynote and was obviously talking about Azure Arc, because that is when we announced it, he said that like for a lot of our customers, hybrid is going to be an end state and not just an in-between state until everything is moved to the cloud, right? So we believe strongly that there is a big need for hybrid cloud offerings. Because there are multiple reasons why customers probably want to not just move everything to the cloud. In many cases, they can't. For example, they have technical reasons where they don't have enough bandwidth, they have bad connectivity, they have too much latency, for example, to the next Azure region. Even though we have a ton of different regions all over the world, sometimes it's just like an app can't handle that latency because the connectivity is not good enough, or again, you don't have any connectivity. And there are obviously other things like data sovereignty reasons where customers just are, for example, not allowed to store data outside of a country, for example. They need to keep it inside, and we don't have, for example, offer Azure region in every country. So there are different reasons, obviously, and there's much more to that. And so we are thinking about, okay, how can we make it easier for customers to actually, like, how can we help these customers, right? I mean, especially if they can't use Azure. And so Azure Arc is maybe one of our latest solutions, which help in our hybrid portfolio, help our customers to do that. And I think that is also, by the way, very important that I mentioned this. We don't have just a single product which does hybrid, right? I mean, if you look at it, I get a lot of questions when we announced Azure Arc, is then like customers were like, does that mean replace Azure Stack? Will there be still Azure Stack? And the answer is absolutely yes, right? Because there are different use cases for it. Now, to come back to your original question, Azure Arc basically is two things. It gives you a single control plane. It uses Azure as a control plane for all your resources. Stuff which is obviously in Azure, like Azure Virtual Machines and stuff like that. You already use today. You use Azure Resource Manager to manage all of that. But customer told us like, hey, this is great. I can manage all my Azure resources at scale. But what about the resources which are outside of Azure? Like, what are my servers I run in my local data centers? What about the servers I run even at other cloud providers? I want to have that single control plane. And again, I mentioned now servers, but obviously that's true also for other things like Kubernetes clusters, for example, so as well, right? And we'll see that in just a bit. That is one thing. So they want that single control plane. So Azure Arc is actually that bridge between our Azure Resource Manager and the resources which are outside of Azure. And it makes resources which are outside of Azure not just look like an Azure resource, but they actually create an Azure resource for that. So it's actually an object. That is one thing. The other thing is, and I have a very nice quote from one of the PMs in the Azure Arc space, the Azure Arc enabled data services. We had a ton of feedback, obviously, that people love Azure SQL. Like, they love managed instance, they love that it's a service, that they love that they can scale it, they get all that security and stuff. But again, for some reasons, they cannot use it running in Azure in some cases, right? So when the customer cannot use like our services running in Azure, we bring these Azure services in there to their data center or wherever they want to have it, right? And that's the other part of Azure Arc. So there are actually two things: the control plane, and then also like bringing services into the customer's data center.
The second part's really neat. I haven't really heard much. I mean, we've done a little bit of Azure Arc here, mostly from the developer side of getting a managed identity and being able to use one locally and stuff. But, you know, I went to the portal and I would create one, and they're like, oh, look at all these other buttons we could press, like update management, that sort of thing, like that I've never really used. So, like when we say hybrid, right? So I guess we'll start on the control side, right? Like when we say control plane, like what does that mean? Like if I've got I'm guessing, like say I've got a VM that's on-prem, and it's sitting in my data center or under my desk, as it were. What can I do with that VM that I maybe would either struggle to do otherwise, or you know, like do I get anything new? Like what kind of things can I do now that this thing is an Azure Arc server, right?
Yep. So I think the easiest way, I'm going to show you that in the portal itself and show you a little bit how that looks like. And then, well, there are many different management services we have, right? Now we can quickly have a look at this if you want to.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Let's switch over. Okay. Let's take a look at your screen.
Bring on the demos.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome. So I'm now. I hope you both have seen the Azure portal, right?
Just kidding. A little bit familiar. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
So if you're here in the Azure portal, and you can see I'm on the all resources page here, and you can see here for those like on the stream, everything in Azure, as I mentioned, is kind of like an object, right, and a resource. And so it has a name, and then it is a type. So we have virtual machines, we have public IP addresses, even network interfaces are actually resources in Azure, and they are basically part of an Azure resource group. And then they have like basically deployed and or running in a location, and they're part of an Azure subscription. So for everyone who has uses Azure, nothing new here, but that is great, right? And we can then manage that really at scale. I have now a couple of I probably have like 100 resources in that demo subscription here I'm showing you, and so it makes it very easy to manage. And all that magic is actually done by the Azure Resource Manager. Now, as a customer, I would say, hey, this is so great. How can I leverage Azure to actually like also manage other stuff? And that is what I'm quickly going to show you to make it easier. I'm going to show it here, and let's go and say I only want to see two types. I want to see, let's say, should be able to type. Let's go first and add. You can see here I have resource types called Server Azure Arc. So I already joined a couple of servers, so I select that, and then let's do. Sorry about that. Let's do also virtual machines. So now I selected basically servers, Azure virtual machines, Linux and Windows, which are running in Azure, as well as my Arc machines. Those are all servers I already joined to the Azure control plane using Azure Arc, and they show up here now side by side. So you can see here, for example, this Hyper-V server here. Let me zoom in here. You can see here that this actually has a type, and it's also joined to a resource group. It's also joined or connected to a region, and it's also part of an Azure subscription. So it looks like an Azure resource. I can then even use tags. So for example, if I filter here, let's say I use a tag here. I have a cost center tag, and now let's select just cost center 1003, and I hope that works for all the resources. You can see here now, I can see all my servers within that specific cost center. It doesn't matter if this server is running on-prem or at another cloud provider, and this one is running in Azure. So I have like the single control plane to actually look at things. which I think is pretty cool. But of course, we're not stopping there, right? So to show you, by the way, this is not just what I want to also make clear. This is not just showing like items in the portal, right? It's much more. That's why I mentioned so strongly like subscriptions and resource groups. So it is actually a object in the Azure Resource Manager. So if I go here, for example, to Azure Resource Graph Explorer, and if it loads, I can then open a query which I predefined and say, okay, I want, for example, run a query to list all my Azure Arc machines. And you can see here, I can run that query, and what will happen, obviously, I will get all the list of my Arc machines. So I could run that query, obviously, also using the Azure CLI. I could connect them using the APIs, or I can use PowerShell to do that, right? But you get the point. It's actually a Azure resource and not just like something we show in the portal, right? But now you say, okay, Thomas, this is great, but probably not necessarily the main thing, right? Not necessarily. I mean, it's nice to see all this stuff, right? But you probably want to see a little bit more, or you want to actually do something. So I'm sure you're both familiar.
I think that's the big thing, right? Is so I can query for them, I can tag them just like other resources, but like why do we tag things, right? So you can find a group of them and then do things to them, right? So now I'm excited because now I think you're going to show us doing something to them.
Exactly. So again, we mean like with tagging and organizing. To be honest, I mean this is like we are treating it now as it's a small thing, right? But if you look at many of our customers, having an overview about like all their systems running wherever they are, but sometimes it's tough, right? I mean, I was in consulting before, and if I told customers I need a list of all your servers, I said, okay, come back in like 2 weeks. I will need to see if we can get an inventory, right? So, for the people who aren't really familiar with Azure Policy, Azure Policy allows us to basically configure our Azure environment and like make sure that we can actually govern, for example, our environment, because you don't want anyone in your company deploy our largest M-series virtual machines with a couple of hundred cores and terabytes of memory, and they drain your credit card in like 3 seconds. You probably want to keep control, right? There's another feature called, for example, the Azure Policy Guest Configuration part. And this allows you to actually audit and configure basically the operating system side. Doesn't matter, again, if it's Linux or Windows, but you can do that for your Azure VMs. Now, what I want to show you here is because now your servers running outside of Azure become Azure resources, you can also leverage that for non-Azure servers. So if I go, for example, here to assignments, what I can do is I can do assign initiative. That's basically just a collection of policies. And then I select here different policies. We have some built-in ones. So you have here a list, for example. Some of them are very technical. Some of them are focused on different standards here. You have, for example, UK official, UK NHS, Swift, PCI. You also have ISO certification. And again, this helps like for your whole environment. But what I want to show you is actually there's a one which does audit of my machines if they have insecure password settings, right? So I can select that, and then I can go out and deploy this, and then in the past, it would now go out and audit all my Azure VMs. Like in that specific subscription, I can obviously select a different scope just to be clear here. I can also select just a resource group or directly on top of a management group. But this then takes a while to audit everything. So like in a good cooking show, I already prepared something here. And if I go to my compliance view here, you can first see that I didn't do a very good job. And secondly, you can see here my policy, which I already deployed. So this is, again, the policy I just showed you. And I'm obviously not compliant. And you can see here why I'm not compliant. So these are all the different rules which I'm not compliant with. And then what is more interesting is what resources are actually not compliant. So if I click on the no compliant resources, you can see here that I have now my Azure VMs. If I zoom in here, you can see here, for example, Azure OS Server. That's, for example, an Azure VM. You can see that with the resource type, Microsoft.compute/virtual machines. But on the top, you can see here my Ubuntu VM, or my Ubuntu server, I shall say, because it could also be a physical machine, which is actually a hybrid compute machine connected by Azure Arc. And it says, hey, that server, that Ubuntu machine you run here in the room next door is also not compliant with that specific Azure guest configuration policy, right?
Nice.
So isn't that
what
already...
Well, that's already useful, right? I mean, being able to see, especially Azure policy. I mean, we haven't spent a whole lot of time on policy, but I mean, especially for auditing and that sort of thing, that's a huge step compared to compared to what we see on prem a whole lot.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, again, this is now the cool part. Is now, I mean, this capability is there. There's a policy part. There's a guest configuration policy part. That is there for like quite a while in Azure, but now with that we can easily extend it to like all the resources outside of Azure.
Yeah. So what about remediation then?
That's a good part. That is something currently remediation is working for. We have that for Azure VMs, and we're currently working to bring that also to your Azure Arc machines as well.
Okay, very cool. So in the future, I'll be able to say, enforce a policy or something, and have that actually push all the way down.
Exactly.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so, I mean, this was just a little bit, right? We have obviously more to share, and
sure.
What I want to show you is now you ask me like, what else can I do, right? So what I can do here, if I want to learn more about Azure Arc, or I want to actually onboard systems, and we will onboard the system in just a bit to Azure Arc, then I just go in the Azure portal. I go to Azure, I find, like, for example, in the search, find Azure Arc, and then I get to the Azure Arc Center. And this is actually the control view I have where I can actually go out and bring all these Azure Arc stuff to life, right? I spoke now, if you look at the menu here left, I spoke about servers here. But you can see here I also have Kubernetes clusters, SQL servers, I have Azure Stack HCI, which we can talk a little bit about later.
Nice.
Everything is connected to Azure, right? And I can then take advantage of different management tools.
So that means I can run my SQL Server on-prem, and then that can be managed by Azure Arc, right?
Exactly.
Sweet.
So this is actually a good point. So, for example, this is not like Azure Arc enabled data services where we actually bring Azure SQL in. That's another part which I also can show you. But this is actually, so if you have SQL Server, as you just said, in your data center, you can connect them up to Azure. And then what you can take advantage of are a couple of management features. And when it loads, I can quickly show you that here. And the first thing you can see now, it looks like an Azure resource, right? It's something like an Azure resource would look like. You can set tags here. It's part of a subscription. And then you get some additional information here. For example, that this is now a SQL Server 2019. And what we can do today is, one of the main benefits is to connect your SQL Server, for example, is you get some security information. So you can take advantage of Azure Security Center and the recommendations we have there. So we can actually see, hey, what is going on here with that SQL Server, and you get all these security notes, right?
I love it.
And is that similar to like what? Is that similar? That's similar to what I would see if I was running SQL in a VM in Azure, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly. So this is now we are in the view for that specific server. But if I would go now to the security center, I could see all my VMs or my servers running. Again, doesn't matter if they run in Azure or outside of Azure. I could see all of them, and I could see like all the recommendations I have, or everything which is not compliant or unsecure, and all of that. I could see that in a single place. But now, since I'm the admin, for example, for SQL Server 1, I just want to. I care about my server, right? And so I'm actually just looking at my server here. And the same thing. And again, these are, as you can see here, These are currently in preview. So we have the Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes clusters, which we talk in a bit about, is in preview. We have SQL servers, which is in preview, and we have also the Azure Arc enabled data services to bring Azure SQL managed instances into your data center, also in preview. What is in GA is the server part. So that's why I'm quickly going to show you that, because that has a lot of functionality already. You can see here all the different servers which are already connected to Azure. And you can see here I have, for example, a data center tag, which tells us where is that machine running. And you can see here a couple of them running actually in a very good high performance data center at my home. Probably not so, but it's like it's good in winter. Like I don't need so much heating for all the power usage. So let's have a look at the server. And again, this is something we can do now. Again, this looks even more like an Azure service, right? Now on the left side, you can see here I have, for example, activity log. I have role-based access control, which we will talk also in a bit, because that is one is very important to us. And then obviously you can set tags and so on.
Thomas, we have a question from Ultramark. He's asking, earlier chat indicated that you could not launch apps when Apple servers were down. Can similar issues occur if a VM is managed by Arc? Can people still manage their on-prem VMs if Arc is down?
Yes, that's a very good question, and the answer is yes. So what I usually, when I do like slides show, is that you can use Azure Arc to manage your servers, but that doesn't mean we want to build that dependency with Azure, right? We don't want that, like again, when your internet goes down, or your camera is frozen, for example, then you don't want that your server isn't running anymore. I will try to fix the camera in just a bit. But we don't want to create that dependency. So you can still use all your local management tools. The server will still run. The application on that server will still run. If it's a Kubernetes cluster, that Kubernetes cluster will still keep running. We don't want to create a dependency in that sense, right? You just can obviously then in that moment not use the management tools you have. And let me see if I can.
So on that topic, while you're looking, I seem to remember, and it's been a while, but I know like in the Intune world, for example, where we're talking about managing workstations and stuff. There's this idea of sort of hybrid management where Intune works with SCCM, and I can manage workstations, manage desktops, etc. But I can kind of do it from both on-prem and from cloud side. Now, at the same time, I haven't looked at that in a long time, so it's possible you can't even do that anymore. But good, your motion's back. So when it comes to management, like my understanding of Arc is it's primarily sort of agent-based, and that agent receives commands and sends data back. But I'm guessing that would never really preclude me from separate management software. Like if I've already got something that is very specific to my org or my company or my whatever, using Arc doesn't preclude me from still using existing tools, or even, and obviously things like RDPing or SSHing to a VM that's sitting in my data center. Arc's availability is independent of that.
Correct. I couldn't have said it better. That's exactly true. It's not, again, we don't want to create that dependency. We don't want to remove all your tools you're using, because probably they are doing a lot of good stuff, right? They're probably there. However, again, you probably want to don't use like we have a lot of customers ending up now, they use some of the management tools for their Azure environment. They use some management tools they have in their on-prem environment, and then they have some management tools which they use at other cloud providers, for example. Now with Azure Arc, we try to have that control plane, so we can reduce the number of management tools you need, and you get actually that single control plane. But again, that doesn't mean that you cannot use your existing management tools at all. So if, for example, you're very good with Windows Admin Center, then go ahead and use that. It's even a good combination, right? So now let's get deeper into this. And as you can see here, I cannot stress this enough. Probably everyone on the stream gets bored by me saying that again, but because it is a real Azure resource, we can do some really cool stuff here. Again, you have security. Again, gives you security recommendations. Now, not just for SQL Server, but also for the operating system itself. And then we have something called extensions. And if you're familiar with Azure VMs, you have the same thing there. So you have VM extensions which you can leverage. So what does that mean? For those who haven't familiar with extensions, if I deploy an extension, these can be a lot of different tools and stuff like that. But for example, here for the Azure Arc VMs, we can use that. We have, for example, a custom script extensions, which allow us to run a custom script. We have a PowerShell desired state configuration extension, which allows us to configure DSC on my server. And then we can also go out and install the log analytics agent, which then will provide us with some additional monitoring capabilities as well. So that is something where now you can see the similarity now between Arc and actually like Azure VMs, right? And then what I did, I obviously onboarded a lot of stuff already onto that VM. Or again, when I say VM, actually this could be also a physical machine, right? I have to be careful what I say here, not that people think it's just an Azure VM. I can onboard log analytics, and now you're probably all familiar. This allows us to collect all like logs from a machine, pump them up into an Azure Log Analytics workspace, and then run queries against that. Now a lot of you probably say, Thomas, well, this is not something new you're showing me. This is already existing. I can just go out and install the log analytics agents, and that is correct. However, the problem we had with log analytics and workspace was actually when it comes to role-based access control, right? I could set permissions in Azure on the log analytics workspace and say, hey, if I have all my 200 servers connected to that log analytics workspace, and I need to give Thomas, the admin of this server 1 here, access to his own logs, that he would see all the logs of all the different servers. And I don't want that, right? So you can see here that we have actually a scope set. So this is now the scope. I can only run queries against that specific server. So I can then get, for example, like performance data here if I run a perf query. And then I get that data here in just a second. It's fast enough. You can see, well, why is it not showing results? Oh, here we go. Sometimes I'm just very, here we go. I'm not a very patient person when it comes to waiting. But you can see here, I can run obviously queries against the logs of that specific server. And again, this is now filtered. So for example, if you have SharePoint admins, or you have, like for example, let's say you have Active Directory admins, which are only supposed to work on domain, with managed domain controllers, but they probably should not have access to the SQL servers. Even though probably if they're the Active Directory domain like admins, they probably would have access anyway. But you get the point, right? So you can actually limit the scope here and say, hey, Thomas, for example, he has only access to that specific server and he can only manage that server. What is also very cool is that with these logs, we obviously also get Azure monitoring capabilities.
Oh,
so the first thing I want to show you is performance. And if my performance would be better, it would load a little bit faster, but...
Well, so on that topic, now you've got me thinking. I mean, so if these end up in monitor, that means all of the, and I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but rules and the like, those all get processed too, right? From data that's on-prem.
Correct. Absolutely correct. So here, as you can see, we get all the CPU like utilization, memory. You can also see that this server is not doing much usually, right? And then you can see here like disk I/O, disk bandwidth, latency, and all the neat stuff you want to see. But what is really cool is when it comes then to maps. Like I'm not sure if everyone who's not familiar with Azure Monitor, again, this is an Azure Monitor feature, is like with a dependency agent. You can now see here the dependencies of that specific server. So you can see here that 10 clients are connecting to that specific server, and then you can see that this server is connecting to other servers using different ports. I quickly zoom in here a little bit. So for example, it connects to that port 138, and it says 3 servers. To be honest, I feel like it should be called endpoints, but now we have a look at it, and you can see here it connects to these different servers, which are now local servers.
Oh,
but if I go for example, let's go to like port 443, and you will see here that this now also has like public internet facing connections, right? So I see here where he is actually connecting to, and you can see even the Azure Arc agent. If I zoom in here a little bit, that's like basically the endpoint of the Azure Arc agent where the agent of Azure Arc connects to. And so you have all these cool features, and that obviously, that feature, as again, you're very familiar probably in using that in Azure, but also you can use it now for outside of Azure.
That is awesome. I love it. Like I haven't used the monitoring side I don't do a whole lot of VMs anymore. Luckily, I get to just write software and let it run. So this is awesome. This reminds me of the App Insights map that we used to have in like app service and functions, and I'm sure it's. I mean, I guess everything's workstation based now, but or workspace based. Like that's awesome. I think especially the fact that it's for on-prem machines, like. Obviously, in Azure, we can see we get a whole lot of visibility for tools like this. But being able to see this on machines running on-prem or other, right? Like that's pretty. Yep. That's pretty awesome. I love this.
Yep. And there's more. Believe me or not, there is more.
Please do tell.
So what we also have here is, for example, change tracking. We have some awesome features, and they again exist in Azure for a while, and they also could use it for on-prem VMs, but they never really got we were very bad in talking about these features, and it was also obviously like when you look at role-based access control, we also had some problems there, because back then when we used it back in the days before Azure Arc, it was not really because it was not really an Azure resource. It was hard to do role-based access on these things. So now I have, for example, change tracking, and I can see here I, for example, installed here a update from Defender.
Is that configuration drift, almost like DSC, desired state configuration tracking?
Correct.
Is that what you're doing?
Yep. So you can actually see here if something is actually what is happening on the system, right? I cannot like. This is now not reverting it back or telling me, okay, this is not. For that, I would, for example, use then policy, like the guest configuration policy part. But it already sees like, hey, what is going on? Like, what did happen? When did that change happen? And I can actually go through these logs and see what is going on. Obviously, not just like here we have changes, but then also we have with that also an inventory. So we can see here what software is installed on that specific machine. So you can see here, get a repository list of all these mostly updates. But for example, I can also look for a specific software which is installed on that machine. So if I look for Edge, you can see here on that server, someone installed the Edge browser. It's highly likely that this was me.
Can you see who installed it? Can you see like get to that level of granularity?
In the changes you could see, however, you could see like, okay, which user did obviously the install. I'm not even sure if I can see it in here, but let's click on it. Because here I just basically see what is installed in the inventory part, but on the changes I could obviously go and see what happens.
And just to clarify, does this functionality support workstations as well? So if I add my workstation as an Azure Arc node, will that show up as well?
That's a very good question. So I know that it's working. However, Azure Arc is really designed for servers. So officially we support server operating systems, Linux and Windows. And we can quickly have a look later on which those are. But there's a lot, obviously, and we add more and more systems. However, I don't think we have the client on the list because, again, this would be more like a Intune probably management thing, right, where you probably want to run like your workstation managed by Intune. But again, I have people who actually managed to install. I think one of you told me that you actually tried it, right?
Yeah, I use it. I use it on my machine for. I was using it purely to get a managed identity endpoint, which works and is fantastic. I'm actually enabling the logging and stuff now because now I'm my curiosity has peaked. And
awesome.
I'm curious to see, although it is my workstation, so Lord only knows what kind of logs are going to get shipped up there. But yeah, I mean, it absolutely installs on Windows 10. I cannot get it to install on WSL 2 because there's no systemd and there's no PID1. So that is one problem, and I tried a few things, and I couldn't really get it working the way I expected. So, but I've definitely put it on some Ubuntu VMs that are running in Hyper-V on my local box. But yeah, it's actually running on my local box currently right now. So yeah, it totally works on a workstation. Whether or not you're supposed to, that's never stopped anybody before, right?
Exactly. And then one thing we already mentioned here, obviously update management. Which is great. I mean, this is already like something, again, a lot of people did not know that we have this. You can see here, actually, I did a very good job because I just recently updated that specific server. So you can see I'm just missing some Defender signature updates or definition updates here. However, it would obviously tell me if I miss any important security update and would show me a big red button here. But let's say I want to install these updates here. I can just go and schedule a deployment. And this would create a deployment job. And so this is now a single server. I'm just saying this is now for this specific server. It obviously recognized that that this is a Windows machine because we already onboarded it. And then I can choose some like different reboot options. So reboot if required sounds actually like a good idea. And then I can schedule this. So I could update now. This would actually then kick off the update job in like 5 to 10 minutes. However, since I'm in a live stream review here, I probably don't want to do that. So I could actually schedule that for later. And I could even go out and be so bold and create a recurring task for that. Because I probably don't want to manage updates for the rest of my life. I can just create a recurring task there and say, hey, every Tuesday, 10 p.m., for example, you go out and install the updates, right? So you can do that. And then you can select which updates you want to install. Again, this is now showing the specific Windows update classifications. On the Linux side, you would have the Linux ones. And then you can include and exclude updates here as well. And then you can even run a pre and a post script if you need to, and you can actually create that job. Now,
you mean you're not going to run the updates live on the stream and see what happens?
Well, I want to use that machine for some other stuff, but I mean,
just messing with you.
So how does this
happen, right?
How does this relate to like a WSUS, right? I mean, like, is this and obviously this isn't Arc specific, right? I mean, what's sort of the how do those two live together, or do they not?
That's a fantastic question. So you're speaking about the Windows Update Service, right? Windows Server Update Service. I think that was like the name. So they work absolutely together. So what Azure Arc does, or basically the Azure Update Management Service does, it basically orchestrates the update process. However, the update source is obviously what you have defined. So if you have defined WSUS for it, then it will take updates from there. If you have Microsoft Update, then it will take updates from there. The source is like independent from the Azure Update Management in that sense. Update Management basically just is the orchestrator, if you will, to do that. Now, obviously a lot of people now, next question, find that so impressive and they like that feature so much, by the way, I do too, that they say, hey, well, I now have like 20 machines. I don't want to configure that for 20 machines. So if you click on here, manage multiple machines, it actually takes you to that Azure Management Service, which is a part of an automation account. And it takes you directly there where it's configured. And now you can see here, I can see all my machines which are joined to that update management solution. And you can see here I have non-Azure VMs as well as Azure VMs side by side. And you can see here some of them have missing updates, some of them do not. Mm-hmm. And then I could also go here, or I could also like find out which updates are these and so on. And you can also see that, I think you can see that, I'm not sure. Yeah, you can see here that some of them are obviously Linux VMs and a couple of them are Windows VMs. And then you could do the same thing here. You could actually schedule an update deployment with the only difference being more or less you could do a group of servers. Like you could say, hey, I want to have all these servers or servers with a specific tag. You could actually go out and schedule that update and deploy that. So that is basically parts of it. And we have obviously more. But I want to show you now a little bit how that actually works, and obviously we want to also talk a little bit about identity too, I guess, because you're that stream.
No pressure. No pressure.
You manage, like, you mentioned managed identity before, so we're going to show you that the Arc system will also have a managed identity, and as you said, you're using that already, and that is actually pretty cool because now if you want to have a server which is outside of Azure accessing Azure resources, you can actually use that managed identity. But I promised you also that I quickly also want to talk about Kubernetes before we go there. As you know, Kubernetes is a hot topic everywhere. So here we have, instead of just managing a server, here I can manage a Kubernetes cluster. And as you can see here, I don't want to go too big into that, but you can see I get also logs and insights. So I get monitoring for Kubernetes clusters, as I would do if I would have an AKS cluster, for example, in Azure, right? And what we can also use policies. That's also a big part, like the policy part for servers. Obviously, I can use that to make sure that also my Kubernetes clusters are configured in the right way. And then now we have get some additional functionality. And imagine now you have like 20 Kubernetes clusters with an application deployed, and you want to update that application. So what we have there is a mechanism we call GitOps. And that allows us, for example, to configure app deployments on that specific cluster. So because I'm like I mentioned that before, it's like a good cooking show. I already prepared one here. So I deployed an application here. And what I did is actually the application is stored in a Git repo in GitHub. And I said, okay, hey, let's on the Kubernetes cluster, let's get that application and check every 3 seconds if there is a change, which is probably in production a little bit aggressive, but for demos, I think that's a good thing, right? So I deployed that, and here is my application. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it like? I expected applause now, but okay.
Sorry. Oh, hang on. No, we can do that.
Wrong, sir.
Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's the wrong one. No, we don't want that one. Oh, wait, no. It is. That is your app, and it's I mean, you know.
I love it.
I even took credit. I mean, mine was not close as beautiful, but we worked with like someone to make it pretty. So, and now I see, okay, there's something wrong, right? I mean, it says now, hello, this is my app. So I don't want that. It should say something else. So what I'm going to do, and again, like people watching, don't try this at home. I'm going to be now this bad admin guy who just goes into the main repository and doesn't change without anything, right? Like this is now, I promise this is an emergency fix, right? So here is the actual message. So if I zoom in here, oops. And I want to change that, so I'm going to exactly do that. And again, don't try this at home because it's probably not the right thing to do. So let's call this, hey, Azure Community. Right, and then I'm still gonna like to fill out here the changes I'm doing, right? So I'm just gonna do that, and then I'm gonna do the commit again. Gonna do that.
No
change.
PRs, no nothing. Straight to main.
Exactly. That is.
That's how real people do production code. don't please.
Unfortunately, it is the case sometimes, right?
You know, my first job straight out of university, I was working for a very small company in the UK, but it was a small company that had almost like 90% of all the bottles and labels generated in the world. So scarily enough, our development process was developing straight to production. And lo and behold, me, a young developer, totally naive and silly, I was running a query against a live database. I deleted 15,000 invoice records from the production system, and you know, everything that could go wrong on that job went wrong. We didn't have backups. We didn't have proper deployment process. Like my deployment process was grabbing a USB stick with the executable and running around the factory floor, sticking the USB to every single device I could find. So yeah, please do not do anything in production. Do not be a Christos.
I mean, why would, like, if you develop directly in production, why would you even have backups? I mean, come on, like then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it's like a place I worked years ago. They did SharePoint development, so like, I mean, like we're already setting the bar at a certain level, but
Yeah, SharePoint.
it was, oh, well, it's 2 p.m. Let's go copy a bunch of DLLs out to the prod servers, and let's do it with a script instead, And yeah, I mean that was what SharePoint development was back in 2008, whatever it was back then. So. Okay, all right. So hello, this is my app, and we've made your change, right?
Yes.
And also, we talked now long enough that multiple times 3 seconds are passed. So I'm sure if I hit the refresh button now, it changed the text, right?
We wanted to give you enough time.
That was really helpful. That was really helpful. No, but you see, you get the point. It changed the message. And again, this is obviously not so impressive if you just change a message. It's obviously more impressive if you actually do like real deployment of an app. And this could be basically anything, right? And it's even less, it's also not that impressive if you do it just with one cluster. But think about now, if I would have configured that for like 200 Kubernetes clusters, I would have configured that app configuration here, that GitOps configuration. I could like update that app in just like 3 seconds in that case, right? I can just go out and deploy that. Obviously, do it in a pipeline, make it in a dev environment, everything. But still, I can really quickly manage and configure app deployments to my Kubernetes clusters running outside of Azure using that. But by the way, that also works obviously with Kubernetes clusters running at other cloud providers. I have to always say that. There's no special version of Kubernetes needed. So if you run OpenShift in your on-prem environment, for example, you can use that too. That is usually questions we get around that. Okay.
No, okay, so on one more note, then one more question. Does that also include like managed clusters elsewhere? Like if I'm running EKS or something in AWS, can I still manage that here too?
Yes, you can.
Oh, nice. Well, because I mean, OpenShift, does anybody actually use OpenShift? I mean, I was thinking like of things that people, that people use. So okay, that's cool. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
The idea is really that we can actually have it like across all the different deployments you have, right? I mean, obviously we support certain service like versions of it and so on, and you can find that obviously in the documentation. But it shouldn't really matter. We don't want to make it like all Microsoft Play, for example. You probably have heard of AKS on Azure Stack HCI, where we actually bring down the Azure Kubernetes service to an Azure Stack, and so then you have like your AKS running in your own data center, and obviously that can also be used together with Azure Arc, and so you can actually then see that cluster popping up here. So then if you want, you can have a full Microsoft stack, but you don't need to have that. So if you want to just like use it as a control plane but you run Kubernetes on top of, for example, your VMware environment, that also completely works, right?
So does this run as like agents that are running on the nodes? Or is this running like in a pod? Is it running in a container? Is it like, where is it? If I deploy this to if I wanted to say I wanted to bring a Kubernetes cluster under management, just one that's running like in a data center or something somewhere. What am I actually doing? Like, am I running? Is it like a YAML based deployment, or am I running scripts on the nodes? Like, how do I get there?
So what you can do here is, I hope it's loading. You can register your cluster here, and hopefully this gives you already the answers to it. So you can register a new cluster. It also tells you, obviously this is just a prerequisite, so it tells you which versions it supports, which ports you need, and those are usually outgoing URLs. And this is also something important I want to mention is when we talk to like people about like when an agent, the agent needs internet access. Actually, it's not necessarily internet access. It just needs access to certain Azure URLs and endpoints, right? So that's a very different than you can still lock it down and so on. And then here you have like how to set up like your machine, how you're actually going to do that and deploy that. And then you can enter here the details of your cluster. And I just need to now quickly pretend I'm doing something here.
Yeah, I've learned the Azure Arc setup wizard is really just pre-fill a script, and which is cool in some ways because it means I can do it 1,000 times to get it exactly the way I want it. And
so you can then actually go out and use some already add some tags, and then you get here the script which you then can run, and then it connects your cluster against it. That's, for example, that you can download this specific script here and do that. And this is for a Kubernetes cluster. But what we're going to do now, and again, you can also switch here, you can switch that to Azure PowerShell if you want to. But what I actually want to do with you, to believe me that this works, I'm going to take a little bit better, well, not better, but easier approach here for me. I'm going to do that with a server. We have two ways of adding a server. We can create an interactive script, or we can, if you do that for hundreds of servers, you probably don't want to log in on each of the servers and put in your Azure credentials. So you can use a service principal, which only has permissions to onboard systems to Azure Arc, right, through your subscription. That's the thing here. But to show you that, I want to generate an interactive script and see how that works. Again, here for this one, we only have outbound for free to specific Azure endpoints. You obviously need local administrator rights on that server to install the agent, and you need to have an existing Azure resource group. So I'm going to select that, and I usually let me quickly.
There are a lot of resource groups there.
Yep, I wanted to do that in order, but I can do it here. So let me do that one. I can then say what is the closest Azure region. Again, this is not necessarily important. I could also go and use one. I'm based in Europe. I could also select one in Southeast Asia or anywhere else. However, we obviously want to have like the closest one. So for me, that's going to be, in my case, West Europe. I'm going to onboard a Windows server. Again, if you do a Windows server, it will create a PowerShell script for you. If it's a Linux server, it will create a shell script for you. I can then.
What about macOS? Boo.
Do they have a server operating system still? I know they
used
had.
to, didn't they? They used to have a Mac server, right? Is that still around?
Yeah. I did actually, like back in the days, I had a Mac Mini which did run one of these, but so far we only support, I think, Linux and Windows in that sense. I could already configure a couple of custom tags. I can also do that later. I can also use Azure Policy if I use that, like to tag resources. And then here I get the script. Now the script does everything for me. It goes out, it downloads the agent, it then installs that agent, which is in the Windows world, it's a MSI file, not mistaken with the managed identity one.
Because we're so good at overloading acronyms, right?
Exactly. I usually don't mention that, but here I think in this stream it makes sense, right?
Yes. Yes, it does.
And then here, it basically then the last command, it actually registers my server. So what I'm going to do, I want to quickly show that. Like, let's copy that here. I hope it's copied it. So let me believe here, you can see here all my servers, and now I'm going to onboard a different server and have a local server created here, Tom's VM2, which I'm going to onboard. So what I'm going to do here is, let's do enter PS session VM name.
Is there an option to actually onboard a new VM directly into Azure Arc as you deploy the VM? Do we have any extensions in the marketplace for Azure to do that automatically?
Well, if it's a Azure VM, you basically don't need to do anything because it's already getting that, right? So that is okay. But if you do a VM outside of Azure, you could actually go and put that script with a service principal in your automation, and then actually it will go out and you can even like do, for example, pre-install the agent, and then just run this registration command after the server while the server is deploying or after it's deployed. Right. So here I'm now on that specific server. I didn't, unfortunately, that's how good I'm prepared. Sometimes I didn't change the name here. I want to be like the pro and say, hey, I'm on Tom's VM2, but you can see that luckily here. So let me run that script, which goes now and hopefully works in a remote session. It's also something I haven't tried, but we're all friends here.
We're all friends. It's a safe space. Don't worry about it. Failure is welcome and encouraged.
So the advantage of doing it in a remote session, like people would ask, why didn't you not just open here the console? I can also do that. The advantage here, I need to, as I mentioned, I need to log in, right? And it will take me to device login. And if I do it here, I don't have to copy all the stuff. I can just click on the link, and that's why I'm trying to do it here as well. While this is installing, let's have a look at the machine I have already done that.
Okay.
So here is a machine. Here's actually the WAC 01, which we already used. So if I go here, I have a process now running. And that's actually the process of the Azure. Let me see. Maybe I'll make it a little bit larger, right, for the friends on the stream. So you can see here, this is now the process running. And then I have a command, Azure connected. So it's Azure connected machine agent. So you can see here, I get the information to that, and I need to talk to the team here. Mine shows now in German, even though the system language is in English.
Is that a bug?
It actually takes some stuff, but you understand that here you have the different commands, and so if I do, for example, a version, I can see actually the agent version I've installed. This is the current one, and then I can, for example, run, like that's what I'm running now on the other machine is actually the connect one. And then
So
what I also
is it a
have
good
is
thing that you can? It's a good thing that you can connect and disconnect on whim. Like you know, I wonder if somebody could maliciously run that command to disconnect a device from Azure Arc.
obviously, well, you need to, yeah, that is obviously like a thing you could do. The thing is, obviously, you need to have certain rights, like you need to have like admin rights on the machine to actually do a disconnect and a connect, right?
Right.
So when you have admin rights, then the machine, I would say, is lost anyway. To be fair, but yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a good point. Like then it falls out. However, when it's disconnected, it will then show in the portal as well. It won't show anymore, right? And it will show that
Right.
this order is not connected anymore to that. Or you can also see if, for example, the agent just didn't respond anymore for a while. You will also see that in the portal, and at one point it will say expired. So
then-
what I can now, yep.
Well, so what it sounds like what we should do is those little toys where like you flip a switch and the cat paw comes up and it flips the switch back off and then that's all it does, right? Those like simple machines. So we do this. We have a DSC extension, or sorry, a custom script extension that just runs disconnect, so that as soon as it onboards, it just unonboards itself again. But yeah, but to Robertable's point in the chat, when that disconnect happens, I assume because this is all going into Azure Monitor, that you would have some sort of a state change event that happens that could fire off, whatever kind of automation you want, alerts, texts, whatever.
Correct. And as soon as it falls, obviously, out of like management, obviously also like, for example, if you go back to the identity part, obviously your managed identities and also lost and not working anymore, right? So in that case, like you would just not see it. And we could obviously, that's actually a good point. I think whoever came up with that, bring me an idea for a blog post. So I could, like, for example, it will show in the logs that a machine is disconnected, and I could actually go and with Azure Monitor create an alert and say, hey, as soon as a machine is disconnected, I want to have an alert in my inbox or in my Teams channel or wherever I put my alerts, and then actually do that. So that's actually a good idea. I just got an idea for that. Thank you very much, whoever I stole the idea from.
Robertables, Robert Tables, little Bobby Tables.
So what I can do is there's also show command. And what it does, it now gives me all the information. And what is very interesting, obviously you can see here, it's joined to that resource group and I get all these local informations. I can see here that everything is running. But more interestingly, I can see here which tenant I'm connected to. And I can also see what ID I have, right? This is now the ID of that specific, it says VM, but actually it should say machine, right? Again, it makes the same mistake as I always do. It could also be a physical machine. And that is now the ID I can use basically when I then run my managed identity and I want to identify myself to that. No worries with that. So that is what I run on that machine. So now let me switch back here. I hope I'm fast enough. Okay, you can see here now the script set basically. Do you want to join that machine? Here is device login. So what I can just do, let me see. Opens the right browser here for me. Well, it does. So it installed the agent, well, download the agent, installed the agent, and now I'm registering that server. And if it's nice to me, yeah, it is not nice to me, so.
Well, kind of like what we talked about earlier with when Chris was talking about device code, like right now that agent is sitting there polling Azure AD saying, hey, has anybody done this? Has anybody done this? Has anybody done this yet? You know, has the user signed in? Has the user signed in? And it's polling that endpoint, waiting to see if if that authentication request is complete for that specific device code.
So now, please recognize me. Okay, here we go. It looks, I'm sure it looks silly on the stream if why is Thomas looking like that, but just using my
no one is saying
face.
that, and if they do, I will defend you.
Oh, that's true.
Quickly, somebody grab their binoculars. See, Thomas was listening. Yeah, grab the binoculars.
So now you can see here I'm actually joined that machine now. So let me quickly clean this up here. And now what happened is here, if I give it a couple of seconds, and now I actually need you to actually give me a couple of seconds to actually pretend we are not waiting for this. But if I do a refresh, and again, it takes usually a couple of seconds actually.
We can wait a few seconds if we need to.
This is awesome. This is I need this also here. Like, so you can see here now, as again, this happens if you don't prepare everything nicely. Your server here now, the one I just showed you before, is now onboarded to Azure Arc, and it shows up now in the portal. And now actually it like reports the agent reports to that back to the Azure infrastructure. So that is cool. And then obviously I get, if I click on it, you can see that this machine is now exactly under management using Azure Arc. Again, and then I can do some like things I just showed you. For example, enable log analytics, enable monitoring, enable security center, and so on. And speaking of that, I usually get questions about, did anyone ask about pricing, by the way? If not, that's like very highly unusual because people usually ask about pricing.
I mean, for what we were using it for, the agent itself doesn't cost anything,
yep.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah. So Mark says, I assume that this is free. Is that the right assumption?
That is a very good assumption here. So we have the basic management, like just onboarding a server, using like tagging, using the Azure Resource Graph, using role-based access control, the managed identity part, and update management, all that. That's actually all free.
All free.
If you then add like other services, like the monitoring part or security center and policy and all that, then there's some cost coming with that, obviously, because it's also same thing for Azure VMs as well, right? Except for policy. And then for Kubernetes right now and data services, because they're in preview, there's no additional cost right now. So if you want to try these out, then you can do that too. Okay, so let me quickly go back to the managed identity. Actually, we're here. I was actually here to talk about the managed identity piece, right? So I have a machine here, and let me quickly switch to this portal because I don't like to go a lot on the go big on our identity tenant in the Microsoft space. So I have my own tenant here.
What? I love the robot. Wait, what is that?
That's my
cloud robot.
You don't know, Tom. You don't know my logo. That's like
I do not know your logo.
That's disappointing. But okay, I will make sure that I speak to my marketing manager that they could, like do some better work on that and make sure that people actually know what it is. So yeah, as you can see, when I have some spare time, I actually customize the Azure portal a little bit and the dashboard. But what I actually show you now is this is now my own tenant. And these Azure Arc servers, which are on board, they get now a managed identity. I don't have to turn it on like for an Azure VM. So every server here, which I onboarded, and again, this is now another tenant, so you will only see one server here, which is on board, Tom's VM. This one has now automatically a managed identity. So if we connect now to Tom's VM, I'm going to do that remotely here.
While you're doing that, people are asking, can we get a sticker with Tommy the robot?
There are stickers, by the way, yes.
Oh.
Well, you need to reach out to me, and then we will see. You will reach out. There's no. Well, you can't get the stickers in the shop, so you need to reach out to me, and then I'll probably send you some wherever
Special.
you are.
Yes, limited edition.
Yep.
Okay.
So now I'm on this machine. I onboarded again. Now this time.
You have to sign up for your newsletter. Somebody says.
Oh, awesome! A new subscriber. That's that.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Roberto Balls is hiking people by subscribing them to Cat Facts. Don't do that, Roberto Balls, please.
Yeah, no, that's not a good thing. So you can see this now. This is a machine I onboarded. Again, this has now a host name. You can also do, like, for example, again, if you do the AC connected machine agent, let's do show. You can see that this one is connected, again, to an environment. And what I want to do now is, let's say I want to get a storage account. I'm quickly going to show you. Obviously, you do much fancier stuff with identities, right? My demo is a little bit simpler. I just want to now from that machine manage, for example, my storage accounts. So if I would run Azure PowerShell, obviously it says, okay, you're basically not logged in, so you need to first log in. Now, I don't want to log in with my user account. I want to use the actual the identity here. Now, as you're familiar with, you can, on Azure VMs, for example, you can use dash, I think it's dash identity. Oh,
I think it's just dash I or dash identity. Oh no, sorry,
Yeah.
PowerShell. Sorry.
Yeah, on the CLI, it's exactly works like with dash identity or dash I, absolutely, yeah. And so with the PowerShell one, that's why I also trapped here. It's just dash identity. However, now I was working obviously with that to prepare the demos and stuff. We have currently something in the Azure SDK which prohibits me to use that specific part, right? So if I would run that, I would run now into an error. That is not because of the managed identity or something. There's just something I don't recall, something in the SDK which PowerShell is currently built on, or also the Azure CLI is built on, which does not leverage the Azure Arc part. However, it's actually the same. So what we have here, I have a script here which will generate me a token from the managed identity. So I'm just going to run that. And that is now my token. I can now use that to basically log in, and I will run that command here. So let me quickly copy that.
So I gotta ask, while you're doing that, what is this history thing you've got going on for PowerShell? Because I love it.
Yep, this is actually super cool. This uses the new PS readline module or feature. They come with PowerShell 7.1 is, I think, their standard. And if you want to use it with Windows PowerShell, you can just reinstall the PS readline version. I think 2.1 or 2.2. 2.2 is currently in beta. And then there is a new feature which actually gives you history. So if I write a command here, you can see here now I have history commands. However, I will show you that. Let me quickly switch while we're waiting for this. Well, we're not waiting for it.
I don't get that one. I'm on 7.1.x. I still don't get that.
You need to enable it. So there are. I will show you that in a second.
Yes.
So
let's dive back from identity stuff and show some cool things.
But here, sorry, I'm very passionate about PowerShell. That's why I love that question. So here I'm running PowerShell 7.1, and this has some even more features. This does not only use history, as you can see. It also uses a module I installed called the AC Predictor module, which predicts more what you want to do. So if I do, for example, get AC key vault, then it gives me already like predictions on what you probably want to do.
That's similar functionality what the Azure CLI does for almost Find, isn't it? When
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, correct. So this is awesome, by the way. I turned it on for a couple of days. I just learned about it, and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna turn this off ever again.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, send us the links if we can get this for our users.
So now I'm obviously logged in using that token I got from the managed identity endpoint, and then I just do get storage account and get it, and I obviously can be logged in. I really wish the identity, and this will work. They're working on it. It will come in soon, like in a couple of releases. I don't know when exactly, in which release of Azure PowerShell or the Azure CLI it will come, but it will come that it actually can just use the identity part to use that. However, if you build apps and you run against the APIs anyway, then it's exactly the same way as you would do it with an Azure VM, right? It feels exactly the same way. And if I now go to the Azure portal here, am I frozen again? That will not be nice.
Your video is, but here's the thing. Every time your video freezes, it freezes you in like the most photogenic way possible. So both the last time it froze and this time, it's not like if it was me, I'd have one eyeball that's higher than the other and half closed and look awful. But
I feel
every time you've frozen, it's been like a perfect snapshot. So
trust me, that's usually not the case. This is really the first time. So
see, this is the difference, Christos. This is why you and I aren't in proper DevRel. We're in identity.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
we could never pull this off.
We could never pull it off. So
trust me.
Blurry.
I'm blessed that it happened there, and like usually it happens on, as you said, at the worst possible moment. I will just take a moment and fix it. But before I do that, I quickly want to show you that this actually now worked. So, for example, also here I can do let's say I do a role assignment here. I think it's an easy way to show that this is actually a managed identity. So if I go, for example, I think Tom's VM is the name. You can see here it shows up, and I can actually use that as I would use it with an Azure VM as well. Nice. So I have that now available. Now think about this, is how crazy this is. I can now use the managed identity for on-prem servers. Again, physical, virtual, Windows, Linux, and so on. And even if they run at another cloud provider. So I can actually take that app and whenever I don't even need to modify it, I can just use that endpoint against it on that specific machine.
So from a developer perspective, this is fantastic because you don't have to have any secrets or any connection strings to anything that can be managed or accessed or secured via managed identity. So if it's a SQL server or an API or Azure Storage, your app running somewhere else, as long as the device is Azure Arc joined, then you can benefit from it. It's insane.
Yep. So what I want to show you, actually, that is also something I haven't unfortunately set it up yet. But in addition to that, we also have an extension for Azure Key Vault, which didn't show up right now in the portal, right? So you need to have you need to actually use PowerShell or the CLI to deploy it. Okay. But what you can do is actually you can use that Key Vault extension. Now think about if you need certificates on your machine, right? In the past, you probably used the group policies or something to roll that out to your different machines.
Yep.
Now you can just create a certificate in your Key Vault. Let me show you. I think the graphic here explains it really well. Put your certificate in a Key Vault, and then with that extension, it automatically gets deployed to your Azure Arc enabled service in a secure way, obviously.
Snap! So that means that, let's say I have a service that needs to run authentication against Azure AD in order to access resources. I can use Azure Key Vault to push the certificate into that VM, and then I can, instead of using client secrets, I can use a certificate to authenticate that service account and do the necessary. Man, that's an awesome scenario, JP. I think we should show it at some point, like doing it end to end.
Well, I think
looks dope.
I think things like being able to roll your SSL, your TLS certificates, right? Like being able to get that cert out of Key Vault via the managed identity, and then use that to, or even like mutual mutual TLS certificate, whatever, right? Like whatever things you've got in there. I think that's awesome. Or if you need to access things under a different context, right? Like if you can't use the manager's identity to access SQL, you must use one that your IT admins have said you must use this specific account. Then at least you can use the manager's identity to bootstrap up to the key vault to get your key from there.
Yep, exactly. So this again, and I hope this shows like a little bit. Like again, I showed a ton of different stuff, obviously, but the main point I think is important to understand that this now it gives us some Azure features to stuff which is outside of Azure, and I think that is a pretty cool thing if you then can combine that, and again shows the whole overall picture what we're trying to achieve and give customers the right tools wherever their applications are running, right?
Yes.
Is this using so is this using this key vault extension? What BSD guy is asking, or does this update certs, or is it just pulling, or is it just for deploying certs to it?
No, you can see here, I can actually go out and actually have a pull interval, which happens here. So you can configure that and say, for example, every hour you want to pull if there are new certificates. You can also obviously have do multiples and list these, and then you get all these basically in. And you can see here, this is a script I'm running here. It obviously uses the local endpoint as we had, and this is again the same thing as I showed it now with the PowerShell module, but again, this would exactly how it works. You can exactly use it as it would work in an Azure VM in that sense.
And this is just custom script extension, right? I mean, is it anything more complex than that? Does it rely on other functionality, or is it just I could just take this script and deploy it with custom script extension and be done?
No, so this script here is actually run, like you can see here, this is a PowerShell commandlet, which is part of the Azure Arc module, or the Azure Connected Machine module.
Yeah.
So you will need to run that. For example, you can run that on your machine. Doesn't necessarily need to be run on the machine you're managing. You can run that, for example, in your Cloud Shell or whatever. And this will then go out, as you can see here, and deploy the extension over Azure to that specific server. So this is not run on the local machine itself. Well, you could, but it actually runs against Azure. And here's just the configuration which we push down. So this is actually the settings we then take into this Azure Key Vault extension, and that's what we then push down to the Azure Arc enabled server.
Wow.
Directly from Azure. So you don't even need to log into the server to actually push that down in that sense.
So you connect to Azure PowerShell, write subscription, and you're done. Damn.
So we got a question from GA Crow. How frequently does the agent need to connect back to Azure? How frequently is that agent connecting back?
Keep alive, right?
Sorry?
It's the keep alive. How frequently?
To be fair, I don't know exactly when the timeout is. It will then show, let me quickly show that in the portal itself. I don't know exactly where the timeout is set to, but it will then show as the first timeout will then show the server here. And I'm sure we can find that in the documentation. It's a good question, actually. I'm a little bit getting a little bit blush here because I don't know the answer to. I haven't checked that yet. Because it's a very good question. No one asked it before.
You don't have to know everything, right? We can look at the docs.
Exactly, but yeah. So at one point here, you can see the status is connected. After, I don't know again what the timeout is. It will show disconnected. And then after a couple, I think it's at least a couple of days, it will then show expire. So at one point, if your server, for example, doesn't come back, it will expire after a couple of days, and it will not be under management anymore, and you need to re-onboard it. Which obviously then also it lets the managed identity expire to be sure, that no one finds an old server somewhere, turns it on, and suddenly has some rights to it, right? That would be not a good thing.
That's an interesting one, yeah.
But again, here you can see it here. So usually I did now a great job setting up my demo environment. Usually there's always some servers down, and then it shows disconnected. However, here you can see that everything is online right now. Unfortunately.
One other clarification to the question is like air gapped environments. Like if they turned on and had internet connectivity for so many, like for a period of time throughout the day, I guess it would really be sort of a sync of, hey, this is what's happened and this is what I need to process, right? And I guess it's just a matter of once we know what that timeout looks like, that'll probably explain the feasibility of that kind of scenario.
So for the server side, I think we do not really support air gapped scenarios yet in that sense. I need to double check, but I don't think we do because we don't have any changes into that. We do that for example, the other part for the services we deploy. For example, I think for Azure Arc enabled data services, we can deploy them in a disconnected environment. So we can actually do things like that. However, we obviously want the system to pull. Again, the timeout is set. I don't know how long you could, if you could modify it and make it okay, let's wait for 3 days or something like that. But you obviously would not get all these informations. The monitoring part would not work. The log, all these benefits you get would not necessarily work in the way you actually want it, right? So, but this is something definitely I wanna figure out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, this whole thing has been super, super cool. I got one question for you. You mentioned the data thing, right? That like bringing Azure SQL on-prem kind of thing, right? What do you have anything that you can tell us about that? I'm just really curious. I haven't heard much about this, so I'm really curious to hear more about it.
So this is actually super interesting, and I had a very good talk. And again, I don't want to do advertising here, but I just recorded a session with Travis Wright, who is actually one of the people working on this, about Azure enabled data services, and he explains exactly. He goes really deep into how we actually manage that, and so. I will quickly scroll down. This is our Teams blog, and you can see I have multiple sessions here we enabled. And at one point, you will find Travis and me. I don't know, where is he? Where is he? Where is the session? Can someone spot it? Oh, here we go. So that is actually what we're going to do. And so what it happens, how it works. Again, as I mentioned, people want to have Azure SQL. They want to have that service, they want to have it deployed as a service, they want to have deployed it, but they want to keep it in their location, or you could even run it at another cloud provider, as I always say, right? What it actually needs, the requirement for it is a Kubernetes cluster. So that is actually what you're going to do. You're going to onboard a controller to deploy that on that Kubernetes cluster. And from that controller, you can then go out and deploy SQL managed instances, as well as, for example, Postgres as well. So that's what you can do. And we have a whole session. I think it's I cannot remember, it's an hour and 20 minutes or something like that, where we talk about this. And you can see here what we actually can do. So this is definitely an interesting session to watch, where he goes through all of that, because I think we're running out of time a little bit, and I want to take that. I don't have any. Also, I would show you if I would have a demo ready. I would obviously also show you that, but I don't. So
no, it's all good. That's super cool. I was curious, sort of how it worked, and that tells me a lot right there.
Yep. So again, so the main thing to know what the requirements are. Again, it's deployed on top of a Kubernetes cluster. It's a container-based solution. So the only thing, the requirement you have is a Kubernetes cluster. Again, this doesn't need to be any Microsoft version of Kubernetes or anything. This can be again, I bring up OpenShift or something running in AWS or Google or anywhere, and then you can go out and deploy that, and then you can treat it as it's actually a SQL managed instance.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm gonna go try this out. So.
I will check if the video here gets 1 or 2 more views. So I'm
Awesome. Well, hey, this has been fantastic. Thanks for showing, kind of giving us a lap around it. Now I've got monitoring turned on. I mean, so at least you can put that. You can put that and say, well, at least one person enabled monitoring and log analytics after watching this. So I'm actually looking at all the machines that my machine is connecting to, and now I'm a little concerned. So yeah.
Yeah, so by the way, just to speak about your concerns, for the logging part, obviously you can manage that. So if you go to, I'm sure you're aware of that, but like first for people also watching Azure Log, where do I have it? Well, let's not log analytics workspaces. You can actually then turn on what logs you actually want to bring in for that specific machine. So you can say, hey, I only want to see these logs. But obviously, if you enable monitoring, for example, you will obviously need the performance logs and it will automatically enable this. But if we go in here, and I'm not sure, because I did just a video on it, you can actually go to, I think it's under agent configuration anymore, or agent management. We'll see. Doesn't matter, you can actually configure it here in the log analytics workspace. You can turn on which logs should get sent to Azure and make sure that these get sent, or if you, I think it's under agent management. Then you can turn it by on machine basis what you want to send up.
No, that's cool. Well, and it's my workspace too, so I don't mind so much as long as it's not going to somebody else's workspace. So, no, this is super cool. Like, in fact, I think it even helps me understand what's going on because I'm connecting to a turn server for one of you to get your video, which might explain why we've been having so much trouble with Christos and Snow. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah.
Well, it was awesome. Thank you so much for taking all the time to show us. This was killer. I love it.
Well, thank you very much again for having me and giving me the opportunity to show this to even more people. Really appreciate it. I was really happy when I got asked. I was like, woo! Yes, I want to be on this. So no, thank you very much again. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun also to talk to you both.
Sure.
So that was really fun.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Awesome. We'll make the video available on YouTube as always, so people can go and check it offline. We'll ping you a link if you want to promote that. And for people that want to reach out to us, you have the links at the top. You can email us. You can use Twitter if you want to ask questions. Always happy to help.
Yeah, make sure to follow Thomas on Twitter and catch up with all of the videos and everything else that are spread out and distributed across the Microsoft content ecosystem. So here's one of 17 different sites where you can watch this video. But yes. Be sure, follow him on Twitter. Get your sticker. Get your sticker by subscribing to CatFacts. Thomas's CatFacts. In the interim, hey, we're gonna be back on Friday. Be hanging out and writing some code on Friday. In the interim, send us your email. Send us your notes.
We have a Thursday show, right? Do you want to have a Thursday show this week?
I don't know. You're off this week, so that means you scheduled a Thursday show on your week off. So
I am
sounds
amazing.
Like I have a Thursday show.
Two user groups. We got Thursday. We got Friday. It's insane. But it's fine.
So anyway, we'll be back later this week. But yeah, ping us on Twitter if you have any problems. Join the Discord. Discord, we've got some fun conversation. In fact, we have a few questions that we need to answer that are out there on Discord, which we'll try to cover later this week. And until then. Stay salty and stay snowy, Christos.
Stay safe. Oh well, the snow is almost melted, so stay safe. I would say.
Well, the sun's out here, so I'm finally excited about that. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us today, everybody. We'll see you on the other side. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.